Hello, I welcome you all to talk to our new VP of Enterprise Architecture. I would like to introduce Aditya Galapudi to all of you. He's a familiar face to most of you. At this point, I want to get into a little bit more about his role and what it entails and how he is dealing with the challenges of the role.
Thank you, Arun, for having me, and feels great to be here.
It's a very interesting role. The VP for Enterprise Architecture. What is Enterprise Architecture and what does it mean to you and your role here at Systec?
Well, there's three different aspects that I am involved in. One, I talk to customers and I try to understand their ecosystem. What are the different components that they're using for solving the problems that they have. And I try to optimize it. I try to make it better, or I bring in a new element or a new tool, technology that would probably solve the problem in a better way, and make sure that they reach the goals that they want to attain for themselves as an organization. Two, I also have a team of architects that I work with, mentor them, and I kind of make sure that they are doing the things that they set out to achieve in an optimal fashion. And I also ensure that I set up the practice along with best practices and make sure that this is a good career path for those who are aspiring to be architects in the future. Lastly, I also work with the Office of Technology to figure out and see how we can use new and upcoming technology for both our customers and for our team to include in their training, and see how we can use that in our project deliveries so we can ensure success for our customers.
Wow. So you are both a technologist, problem solver, as well as a coach.
Well, yes, it always have to play two hats.
Okay. And historically, Systec's been about its problem-solving skills, and that has meant a lot of wins are captained by our architects. So it's a critical role, and you take on a team and you have to mentor them through that. You yourself have been an architect for Systec a lot of time. Do you want to talk about your experience in this role and capacity?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, I started my career at Systec all those years back, and I have played multiple roles, chief of which has been an architect as well. So it is a challenging role, in fact, because one, you have to understand technology, like you said, and you have to keep up with the technology. Two, you also have to understand the customer's problem. So you have to put yourself in their shoes and understand what it is that they want to solve, right? And figure out a solution from technology's perspective to arrive at a solution that is both feasible as well as something that can satisfy the requirements of the client. So yeah, it is a challenging role, but it's a very rewarding role as well, because you're able to achieve your end goals for your customer. It's a very satisfying feeling that you get. And having to train the team, that in itself is also challenging, because one, you have to keep up with the technology, but also ensure that people are well versed and aware of it. So there's a fine balance. I usually try to spend a little bit of time researching on new products. The most of the time, majority of my time that I'm doing my reading, I try to keep up with what is already existing and established. So the new technology, it's going to take time to pick up. A little bit of time that you spend there is going to help in the longer run when that becomes mainstream. So you have to find that balance and play both cards.
What are your biggest challenges ahead?
Biggest challenge would be to get people to wear both the hats, both the technology hat as well as the business hat, right? So you need to be able to understand the requirement and the technology and marry them both. So that's going to be a hard one to crack, and not everyone's ready for it, but those who do make the best architects.
You defined the best architect. So how would you define it?
They got to be a good listener to be able to understand what it is that's being asked, and it has to be a good observer. you've got to be a fast thinker. You need to come up with multiple solutions. So it's not always that you come up with the right solution. Sometimes things don't work, but you need to be able to be on your toes and evolve as the challenge progresses. Right? It's got to be someone who can keep up with the fast pace and learn on the go.
So what would be your advice to somebody aspiring to be an architect or somebody that's just become one?
Well, the easiest thing would be to keep up with the technology. Do your learning. You have to understand data. You have to understand how it interacts and plays around with different equations, different parts of any organization, because at the core of any architecture there's always data. It's always data movement or data transformation or data visualization, right? So that's the common factor here. So you have to understand data and how to manipulate that data. So any technology that comes on top of it, if you pick even like one example from each space of how the data is flowing through the life cycle and having an understanding of it end to end, that would help, because essentially what we're trying to do is the same. Different tools come in and go, but their end result remains the same. So it's not a hard task to pick up a new tool, but trying to understand the whole life cycle of that data would help someone to be a good architect.
Fascinating. Now, I'm just curious. You talked about how your team can, keep up to date, move forward. Is there anything that you're reading particularly that might be interesting?
I've recently just heard about a book recommendation, AI 2041. It tells the story from the perspective of one storyteller as well as AI innovator in the space of technology. So together they've combined and come up with a series of short stories which talks about how the future world would be in 2041. It's seated in reality with the current technology. So they're talking about how our current technology can evolve and transform the world as we know it. So it feels futuristic but realism bit where it can potentially happen. And they also, at the end of each story, they talk about what are the tools and what are the technologies that they've used in that story and how, in what form it is there in the present day. So I'm really excited to read that.
Fabulous. Lots of people at Systech with lots of questions. Is there anything else you want to be able to tell your team?
Well, one thing that always helped me was to stay curious, always ask questions, always ask why. See, another thing I always loved about Systech is that there's no thing like a set role. Anyone can do anything. If you're interested in doing something, nobody's going to stop you. Just pick it up and start doing it, right? So that's has always been one of the best learnings at Systech for me, because I've never stuck to just the role that I was supposed to do. Doing that little bit extra, it always stayed with me.
Yeah, it's always fun to do somebody else's job, right?
Well, think of it like a helping hand. Right?
Yes.
So you come up with a different perspective that, when someone who's doing it day in, day out, they may not have that perspective just because of the fact that they're too deep into it.
Yes. I really wish you the very best of luck in your new role, and as you guide the ship, I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.